watching that enjoyed that. Fell right next to a live mic. That was not what I wanted. All right. So Joshua chapter 1. We are starting a new series going through the book of Joshua. And hopefully everyone else enjoys working through a book of the Bible as much as I enjoy. One thing that I want to put out there is, if you know I'm working through a book of the Bible for a sermon series, what do you think one of the best things you can do during the week is? Read ahead. Come to church with questions about the text and just pepper me with them, trying to stump me about, or just read the Bible and know the Bible. But Joshua chapter 1 is what we're going to cover this week, and I really don't know how long it's going to take to work through Joshua. Part of that is Joshua is a very interesting book, because whenever you and I think about Joshua, we think about the children's church and Sunday school stories and how exciting it is, and then hopefully you think about the VeggieTales movie with Joshua. Come on, please tell me, if you don't think about that movie, then Phil Vischer would cry. But no. But all of a sudden, when you get through, halfway on Joshua, it becomes, very different than the exciting conquest story. It becomes about, this people lived here, and this person lived here, and this allotment to here. So I really don't know how long it'll take for us to work our way through the book, but we're going to work our way all the way through the book, asking, why did God record this book for its audience, and then why was it preserved for us in today? Firstly, I want to address that question of, why do we think Joshua was recorded? Why is this book in the Bible? Why was this book kept for the people of Israel? And I believe that a simple way to put it is that it is God's concrete answer to show that He has worked, and that He's worked mightily, and that He is worthy of praise and complete adoration. Now, I will show later on throughout the book why I am so focused on that. But this book is a change from one leader to the next. It is a change from the people being outside of a promise to then receiving a promise. But not only that, this is a transition between the people of Israel having a scattering of an identity to having a more concrete identity as being a nation of people devoted to Yahweh. So there's a lot of things going on in this book. And as I said in my Sunday school class, do you think that there's a little bit going on or a lot going on? And the answer is always, there's a lot going on. And we're not going to be able to cover every theme and every issue inside of this book. But I wanted to just preface with, if this book was preserved for the nation of Israel to have a concrete history of seeing God move, God work, and God act, then I would say we, as people who are following that same God, will receive a benefit of seeing this and having just a reminder that God works. But not only that, we will see how God works and why God's worked, and hopefully we will receive some blessing from there. But with that, has anybody else wondered in the last couple years, what is God doing, or will God do anything? Sometimes I believe we want to see God make a big action and a big move. And the people of Israel were sitting on 40 years of waiting. What will God do? And it's with that question of 40 years of anger and frustration of living in the wilderness that they are finally entering into the reality of God moving, shaking, and blessing. So read along with me. I'm going to read the whole chapter 1. It's not that long. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I am about to give to them, to the Israelites. I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon, and from the great river, the Euphrates, all the Hittite country, to the Mediterranean Sea in the west. No one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. So Joshua ordered the officers of the people, go through the camp and tell the people, get your provisions ready. 3 days from now we will cross the Jordan here to go in and take possession of the land the Lord your God is giving you for your own. But to the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, Joshua said, remember the command that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you after he said, the Lord your God will give you rest by giving you this land. Your wives, your children, and your livestock may stay in the land that Moses gave you east of the Jordan, but all your fighting men, ready for battle, must cross over ahead of you, of your fellow Israelites. You are to help them until the Lord gives them rest, as he has done for you, and until they too have taken possession of the land the Lord your God is giving them. After that, you may go back and occupy your own land, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you east of the Jordan toward the sunrise. Then they answered Joshua, whatever you have commanded us, we will do, and wherever you send us, we will go. Just as we fully obeyed Moses, so we will obey you. Only may the Lord your God be with you, as he was with Moses. Whoever rebels against your word and does not obey it, whatever you may command them, will be put to death. Only be strong and courageous. All right, Joshua chapter 1. All right, so as I introduced earlier, this chapter is the transition of one leader to the other. This is a transition of Moses to Joshua. And interestingly enough, a couple of things should be noted. Moses was known as a servant of God and a friend of God. Moses was also known on multiple occasions to intercede in prayer for the people of Israel. Moses is the quintessential leader. He is the archetype. He is the one that's supposed to be the example that all else were to follow. And in fact, as we read, he was the prophet that was prophesied that there will come one who is even greater than him, which is ultimately fulfilled in Jesus. In Deuteronomy 18, it's fulfilled in Jesus. So Moses is a big deal. And the people of Israel are in a very real question of, are we going to be able to succeed what the Lord has promised us? Because Moses, there's not going to be another one of him. Now, that is why we have, in verses 1 through 6, God directly stating to Joshua, and by extension to the people of Israel, not to worry. He will still walk with Joshua as he did with Moses. Now, this is important for the people of Israel because the promise that they've been given cannot be fulfilled unless God is there, unless God is the one who gives to them the land. As you see in verse 3, I will give you every place that you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Interestingly enough, the people of Israel, they were not supposed to go take the land. They were supposed to go receive the land from the Lord. which is very important to note, that it is still, everything about this is them receiving the promise that God had given to them. And that's a repeated refrain throughout the book is God gives, God gives, God gives. But something that I want to think about then, though, is with this transition of Moses to Joshua, the fear that the people of Israel had. The fear of, are we going to actually be able to go and do what was said? Remember, one of the last reports that they had about this land was that it was full of giants. That there's no way that they could get it. That there's no way that they're not going to just go in and get destroyed, annihilated, and beat up. There's a bunch of French peas making fun of them on top of the wall. Come on, you guys. Go home and watch VeggieTales this afternoon. Or this sermon series will be very boring. So as this promise is given, the people of Israel have to trust that despite 40 years of not seeing God make massive moves, that this move will still happen. Now, God had daily provided manna for them. But think about it. Everyone who had said, like, there's a new generation of people that have been brought up inside of this, where their normal is they receive manna, they go about their business, and is God going to do something? Now, I want to make a specific point of application to everyone here right now. Something that I want to emphasize with a thought of transition of Moses to Joshua. I have heard it mourned and rude about every single church that I've been at, every single place that I go, that why do all the good men and women have to be dying? What will ever happen now that they aren't here? I buried Hubert Cripe. I felt that question of what do we do whenever the legends die? What will happen now? What will happen in the present? Do you realize that we serve the same God who was the God of Moses, who was the God of Joshua? If God could deliver on his promises of never leaving nor forsaking in that transition, what do you think God is doing now? Do you think God is just fretting, wringing his hands, saying, oh no, all the good people are dying? How will Grace Bible Church ever survive? Do you think that that's something that God's worried about anytime someone dies? Or do you think that he says, I will never leave, I will never forsake. I'm the same yesterday, today, and forever. You see, oftentimes I think we read through the book of Joshua and we skip over just how big it is to realize that God promises the people of Israel to be there with Joshua the same as with Moses. You don't have to be afraid of any transition in your life. You don't have to be afraid of how will we ever survive? How will this ever make it through? Is God still here? Is God still alive? Is God still big? And interestingly enough, something is stated 4 times in this chapter that is only stated 13 times in the entire Old Testament. What do you think that statement is? Be strong and courageous. Be strong and courageous. So I have verses 5 through 9 highlighted in my chapter. Listen or read along. No one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Verses 5 through 9, in my opinion, are the core, the essence, the sum, and the picture of this entire book. The command to be strong and courageous is not a foolhardy go and don't care. Oftentimes, whenever we have a misguided notion of courage, oftentimes. Being strong and courageous is not the lack of intelligence that says, don't do that. This is hold strong to what God has said He will do and follow it. Interestingly enough, whenever you read what Paul says to Timothy, he says that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but a power, love, and sound mind. This is a similar refrain throughout all of God's redemptive history, is that He gives His people strength. And I want to emphasize, God gives His people strength. Inside of these verses, He says, be strong and courageous. And then He says something that we skip over. And then He says, be strong and courageous. If all we focus on is be strong and courageous, we lose sight of what it means to actually be strong and to be actually courageous and what the goal is. God does not call Joshua to just walk into the land and say, come and get me. Now, there are some judges in the book of Judges that have that kind of strength and courage. But also, if you remember in Matthew 28, 18 through 20, there's this thing that we call it the Great Commission. It is an echo of this, where Jesus says, I have given you all authority has been given to me in power of heaven and earth, and I will go before you, where you'll then go and teach, baptize, and make disciples of every nation. It's almost like a repetition of what Joshua says here and what God has. Of God's presence is the surrounding barrier of His people, and that is the assurance and the confidence and the courage. But I'm also going to take a step deeper into this, because being strong and courageous means holding to God's promise that He is who He is, and therefore doing God's will. That is the contextual answer for being strong and courageous in this chapter. And I say that because listen very closely again to verses 7 and 8. It says, be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. The command to be strong and courageous. It's on one side and the other side of the statement of keep the law that I gave you. Keep the commands that I gave you. Don't turn to the right. Don't turn to the left. But it doesn't end there. He says, meditate on it. Keep this on your lips so that you may follow it, so that things may be prosperous. Notice that back in Numbers 14, God had said, this is the land I'm going to give you. They send out the spies. The spies come back and say, God can't do it. What was the result of that? 40 years of wandering in the desert. They were not being strong and courageous. But after Numbers 14, if you read Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, there's a couple of laws in there, aren't there? One or two, maybe 613, I think it is. And in fact, Deuteronomy, the last few chapters of it, end with God saying, this is what will happen if you don't follow the book of the law. You're going to have curse, you're going to have failure, you're going to have this, you're going to have that. Moses, in his last great sermon to the people of Israel had said, essentially, this is the law. Follow it and it will go bad. It will go well. This is the law. Don't follow it and things will go poorly. Joshua is not told anything new inside of this chapter. So this is my question for you. If what I'm saying is true, that being strong and courageous is not just going out and acting like nothing can hurt you, but instead being strong and courageous is believing that God will be with you and that you should do His will, how do you know what God's will is? And I want to say you know it the exact same way that Joshua was supposed to know it. Don't let this law depart from your lips. Meditate on it. Ruminate over it. Think about it. And this is what I find so fascinating and so interesting. I believe that we have a high view of the Bible in this church. And it's something that I want to fight for until the day I die, that we should have as high of a view of Scripture as possible, that we should want to know what Scripture means. What was the Bible that Joshua was telling the people to have? Did he have the Psalms yet? Did he have the book of Romans? Did he have John, which is always the first book to be translated? What did he have? He had the law. And so I state this because I think we have a wrong view oftentimes of the law given in Scripture. If we read the law and we don't see God working diligently and hardly to show His character and His way and His desire to keep His people safe, strong, and secure, and